Hello everyone, my name is Cornelius Nomechi. I'm a medical doctor from Ghana. I completed my MPA degree at the Harvard THM School of Public Health this past summer. Last year, during my application process, I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Banda Khalifa, who is a friend and a senior colleague. Dr. Banda's knowledge and experience of the graduate application process made it easier to write an outstanding personal statement, also aim for the right test course and finding the right people to write recommendation letters for me. He also gave me a really good insight about the funding landscape available for me for my education. I was able to get admission in most of the top schools that I applied for, including Johns Hopkins, Columbia University, Boston University, and then Harvard University. Yeah, so if you are actually looking to advance your studies and you're looking for a good and friendly coach, I'll recommend no other person than Dr. Banda.
Hi, my name is Dr. Banda Khalifa. I'm a physician and a current PhD student at the world's #1 School of Public Health, the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I also earned a dual Master of Public Health, a Master of Business Administration on a fully funded SOMA Scholarship here at the Bloomberg School after gaining admission to Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and the rest of the top schools. So, tell a friend to also tell a friend. Come along with me by subscribing to this channel as I share all the techniques and strategies for putting together a strong application package and hear from experiences from some of the most successful international scholars. I'll also invite program directors, admission committee members to share insights into what it takes to get into their program.
Hi, my name is Sharon Kabo, and I'm a medical doctor from Ghana and an incoming dual MPA student of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Graduate school application can be very stressful without any help. During my application process, I was very fortunate to have Dr. Banda Khalifa as a friend and a mentor to help me through it, from the selection of my schools to my recommenders, and even throughout the SOPAS process. It helped to review my resume and my statement of purpose. This helped me to present a very strong application and gain admission into most of the schools that I selected, including Columbia University, Brown University, and Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I would like to recommend his YouTube channel to you. Kindly tune into his channel. If you're yet to start the process, or you have started the process and you're finding some difficulties, his advice and his tips will help you to be able to present a strong application and hopefully gain admission to the school of your choice.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Scholars Table. I'm your host, Dr. Banda Khalifa. Today, we embark on a journey of discovery as we explore the world of PhD applications and the interview process. I understand that most of us, feel the obstacles and the uncertainties that comes with the process. That is why from the beginning, I said that this platform is designed to provide you with the knowledge and the tools that you need in order to navigate the process with confidence. For many of us, pursuing graduate school is a crucial step for achieving our academic and professional goals. If today is your first time, you're welcome. This is the Scholars Table. This program is also streaming on YouTube and Facebook. You can leave your comments and questions, and I'll be happy to answer them at the end of the program. Today, we are very honored to have Professor Jillian join us to talk about such an important topic. She will share her experiences and insights about the PhD application and the interview process. She'll provide valuable tips and advice drawn from her own journey and extensive experience in academia that will help you make your application stand out and your interview process go very smoothly. Professor Jillian is a faculty at Cornell University, Department of Biological and Environmental Engineering. She's very passionate, as we all know, about helping young scholars and researchers. She's one of the most credible sources of scientific knowledge and the go-to person for everything PhD applications. Without wasting much time, I would like us to welcome Professor Jillian. Professor,
Hello.
good morning.
So nice to be with you today.
Nice to meet you too.
So thanks for having me and for this wonderful platform and work that you're doing. I think it's so important that we really share our knowledge and we globally get better at doing things and learning from each other and joining this community of scholars together. So it's so wonderful that you're doing this and happy to answer questions from people as best I can.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for honoring my invitation. As of now, we have like 100 and something people watching us on LinkedIn. We also have almost 20 on YouTube and almost 15 from Facebook. So we are reaching a significant number of people. So just to start, I want you to kind of tell us a little bit about your research and what you do at Cornell University and why you're so passionate about helping young scholars and researchers.
Yeah, so I am a professor, an associate professor in engineering, which in the US means I've gone through the process of being a PhD student, a couple years afterwards, an assistant professor, and then tenured to get to be an associate professor. And my research really looks at renewable energy conversions and green materials, as well as policy and kind of pedagogy about how we teach and how we can teach better. Because I'm really passionate about not only engineering solutions for sustainability, but how do we get people around the world to buy into these solutions and to actually make them a reality. So that's a lot of what my students and I work on in the lab. And then outside of the lab, I'm really passionate about making sure that as a global community, we all have more opportunities to learn from each other and to grow together. And so that's one of the reasons I've taken to LinkedIn a lot this past year, and spent a lot of time trying to kind of shed light on this process for applications and for interviews and for selecting a lab and helping people understand that part of it's a numbers game and there are a lot of moving parts that I don't think everyone knows about, and that's not really fair. So hopefully we can make the process more transparent.
Yeah, and I think that is such a powerful statement to kind of help people reach people no matter where they are on the globe. I can see people from all over the world, Asia, Africa, everybody's here listening to such an informative session. Thank you so much for all you do, and I'm sure our students and prospective applicants are equally expressing their gratitude for sharing your knowledge on the platform. I want us to dive straight into the application process. Uh, in your view, what do you think are some of the critical considerations for selecting as a student? So as an applicant, what do you think should be some of the most critical considerations for selecting a PhD program in a research area?
That is such a good question. And I think your last part there, selecting the research area,
Mm-hmm.
is the most important. Um, you could go through the numbers and look at what's the top school in the country for engineering,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll get a list. But if you're not passionate about what the faculty are doing there and what's going on in terms of research, your PhD is not going to be successful. So I think the first step in this journey is to do a deep dive into oneself and say, what makes me wake up in the morning and want to learn and want to grow as a person and an intellectual? And that's the area that you have to grab onto. And then you should start looking at who's publishing in that area, where is the work being done, um, who would make the mentor that's going to help me get to my next phase in that specific research field. All the time I get requests of, oh, I want to do a PhD in, for example, environmental engineering. And that's great. I'm in a department of biological and environmental engineering. But when a student then gets asked the question, well, what do you want to do a PhD on? They just say environmental engineering. That's a huge field in and of itself. And if you don't know what it is that you want narrowly to do, you're not quite ready to apply for a PhD yet. So I would say knowing yourself and what you want is the first big step.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that is such an important stage in the application process. Figuring out exactly what you want to do. You don't have to be like super specific on, for example, your thesis topic and
No,
those
no.
things, but at least you should have an idea. You should have where you're interested. So you can't just say, "Oh, I'm interested in epidemiology, so I want to do epidemiology." What is an epi that you're interested in? Is it infectious diseases? Is it uh, cardiovascular epi? What are you like? Just narrow it down a bit. So I think that is very, very clear. So like prospective applicants will take their time to reflect, know exactly what they want to do before they put in their application. So let's as a student who is trying to apply for a PhD program, what do you think should be the consideration to make my application stand out?
Ooh. Um, the statement of purpose to me is the thing I really dive into when I start reading applications. And it's not just about having the right structure or well written statements,
Mhm.
but it's really about showing thought. And, given this whole chat GPT debate of AI could write my statement for me, I bet AI could write a statement for you. I and most of my colleagues are going to see right through it.
Mhm.
We know what those types of responses look like. What we're looking for is someone who can show us individuality and initiative and thought and analytical reasoning in that statement. So maybe you've read 10 papers in the field that were published this year, and you chart them all out and you say, hey, this paper talked about this one little problem and this one added to it, and you show a network in your mind. And then you identify, there's this gap in the field that could be really important. Chat GPT can't do that, but
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
can. And that's a great way to show someone in a statement of purpose that you really are ready to take on a PhD. So anything that you can do in that statement of purpose that shows an analytical ability, a sense of self, and of independence is amazing.
Yeah, and I think you're rightly, it's perfectly stated. People think Chat GPT is going to disrupt uh, a lot of things, but I certainly don't see it reflecting our personality and how like we are different from each other. And your statement of purpose, for example, is it's something that helps you differentiate yourself from others. So yes, it's very important to come out
with your own unique ideas or your own unique way of telling your story. So in your time, reviewing applicants, dealing with prospective students, what do you think it's why do you think people put so much emphasis on students or prospective applicants reaching out to faculty and building some form of an interaction or relationship with those faculty before putting in the application? What do you think is the advantage of that?
I think there is some advantage, but it depends on the faculty member in particular. I have colleagues who will not even open those emails that say prospective applicant, because they're just overwhelmed and all they want to see is the application and they'll know at the time who they'll reach out to.
Mm-hmm.
So, for all the people that I've seen these horrible, like, messages saying like, no one ever gets back to me. I'm doomed. You're not doomed. It's okay. And there are different norms in different fields as to who will get back to you when. Then in other cases like mine, I'll try to get back to people and, kind of say at least a little bit about the projects I might have available funding for so that people could tailor an application. But to be honest, some days I get like 300 or 400 emails and responding to everything gets difficult. So don't take it personally if someone doesn't respond. And then there are other faculty and you'll find this more with especially some of the junior colleagues, the untenured faculty, who really, really are looking for students and want to cultivate that relationship in the beginning because they feel like they're competing more for the best students. So you're going to see this huge range of responses, and it's just kind of a luck of the draw of what you get and when. So I think it's great to try, but I wouldn't put too much weight on hearing a response or not hearing a response.
Exactly. And I think, as you said, it depends on the program and also, I mean, the faculty. I've had so much interaction with a couple of faculty members, even at Hopkins. I sent them like initial emails, no response, no response. Uh, Finally, when I got in and I met them, they said, "Oh, so sorry, I couldn't respond. We didn't know what to say because I mean, it's not as if our response is going to change anything in the selection process. So sometimes we feel, we don't exactly know what to tell applicants. But once you get in, we are ready to work with you. So I think it's important. So if you're on the line and you've sent a bunch of emails and you're not getting any response, it's not as if you are not a qualified candidate. You can still put in your application and it will be considered as it would for everybody. So in reviewing applications, what do you think are some of the common mistakes that applicants make during their PhD application process? The common ones.
I used to think there were mistakes more frequently maybe 10 years ago, but people are getting really savvy and really careful about these applications. So I looked through a slew of applications not too long ago, and there are just 100% of them are amazing candidates who I feel would be just incredible to work with, and I may have one funding line. So to me, it's not really about making mistakes anymore. I mean, spell check and grammar check your statement, but it's really about how do you make it stand out. So I guess the mistake in that sense is not showing some sense of self-awareness and kind of knowledge of what the PhD is going to entail. You really need to show that that this is a commitment to learning and to growth. It's not just checking boxes.
Yeah.
And so you want to demonstrate through that you personally understand what this process is and why you want to go through it.
Yeah. You're perfectly right. So sometimes I get that statement that we know like everybody who applies to this program it's qualified, but we have limited slots that we can offer. So sometimes it's very difficult for us in selecting, for example, 13 candidates out of 400 well qualified applicants. So you not getting a slot is not an indication that you're weak or something. It's just that the opportunities are very limited. So as you've said, it's very competitive. Well, how can applicants, what are some of the strategies that applicants can use in the PhD application process, especially for those, I know people who are trying to pivot from one field to the other. So if your interest suddenly changes and you want to switch, is do you think it's advisable to switch first of all, and what strategies can be used for these individuals?
Yeah, switching and pivoting fields is really tricky,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're going from an undergraduate straight to a PhD. If the fields are too different, people will question, do you have any relevant skills? And in those cases, I usually advise my undergraduate students that want to make a big change to go to work for a year or two
Mm-hmm.
in more of the field that they're looking at. So maybe they did um, material science for their undergraduate, but they really want to come to do like environmental chemistry. And I'll send them to maybe an environmental consulting firm or a firm that's at least making materials for environmental applications, and they'll go work for a year or two to really get skills and immerse themselves in that field and understand it. And then not only are they more knowledgeable about the field they want to go into, but they've also had a leg up because of the experience.
Yeah.
Personally, I love hiring students who either had some sort of internship, volunteer experience, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
not directly related, just something that shows that they got out of the classroom and they found a new skill and a new way to kind of be in the world. So I would say strengthening your application through
Mm-hmm.
experience is huge. It doesn't mean you have to go pay for another degree. Doesn't mean you need to go write a review article in your field. That's not what we look for. We're looking
Mm-hmm.
for the person,
Yeah.
and the experience they bring.
Yeah. So I mean that is a very good advice. If you're trying to switch or pivot to a different field, at least try it out first. Go get some internship or some level of experience, and be sure that this is exactly what you want, and then you can make that bold step. Um, so you earlier on mentioned that like a lot of things have changed. How do you see the PhD application process changing in the future? Are we still going to put a lot of emphasis on, for example, SOPs and recommendation letters and all that? Or like, where do you think this is going?
I I honestly hope we do keep emphasis on at least the statements because they're the one thing that the applicant can really control at the time that they're submitting that application.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can't control what you did your freshman year, your first year in college. Your grades are your grades now. Um, the recommendation letters, this is a personal thing. I think they're important, but only to a point. Because I think, for some of the systems that we have across the world, it's not fair. I've heard of students having to pay for letters of recommendation and, or just faculty, it's not a norm to write them, whereas it is for us in the
Mm-hmm.
US. So I try not to put too much weight on all the letters. That being said, if there are letters that say this person is not capable or doesn't show up for work, that's bad. You don't want to use those.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way this will change is kind of just another level of expectation on the SOPs. Because of things like ChatGPT, because we expect more and the fields are more competitive. I mean, when I went to grad school, so many years ago, I knew the field kind of that I wanted to do. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't quite know all the reasons I wanted to do a PhD.
Yeah.
Now I'm reading these statements, it's like, I want to do it because I know this, I know this. I'm like, wow, I could not have competed with these people from
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. I think as you said, a lot of things are changing, and to come in time that it will even be more competitive because there are so many resources that people can use to strengthen the application. So it's up to you to also step up your game. Um, I just want us to pick a couple of questions from our comment section here on LinkedIn. So we have Gifty asking about GRE. How significant is GRE in the decision-making process? I know, for example, a couple of schools don't require GRE now, but there are some programs that still do. What do you think is the is a weight that they put on GRE and other test scores?
So our program also does not require them anymore because we do understand that they only tell you so much about someone, and there are some for sure biases within those exams.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, if you took them and you did really well and you want to report a score, it's not going to hurt you. If you took them and you're in the 50th percentile, I would not report that score. Like, okay, fine. It doesn't matter anymore as much. And that's why I say like the SOP is so important. Because we're slowly taking out the the metrics we're using. And so what do you have left? Okay, well, you take out a numerical one, you need to have something else. But personally, I don't put a lot of weight in the GREs. Most schools in the US, because we are teaching and working in English, require a language exam.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's going away anytime soon. And some people say and debate the merits of that, but the problem, of course, is that you could be teaching assistant on day one of your fellowship, and you have to be in a classroom helping to teach in English. So I think that's why schools are just requiring them still. At the same time, personally, I just Skype or Zoom with people and just talk to them. Can you communicate? Are we having fun? Are we enjoying our conversation? So to me, the GREs, they only tell us so much.
Yeah, I think a lot of programs are moving away from the GRE. And as you said, if you're a student and GRE is becoming like an obstacle to your PhD application, there are several programs that are not requiring GRE. So why stress yourself and go through it? And even if you have GRE and it's not like a stellar score, as you said, it's not in the 80th or 90th percentile, why would you risk it? Yeah, it's not necessary. There's another question from Engineer Joseph Amponsa. So he wants to know whether the ranking of your previous school matters for your PhD application. So, for example, if I had my master's program in a low ranked school and I want to apply to your program, how would that affect it compared to someone who, for example, went to like a very top tier master's program?
It is one small and very small, I think, sign.
Mm-hmm.
There, if you went to a top program and you were the top student, sure, it'll help you. That being said, personally, in my laboratory, we have people from very small liberal arts colleges to Cornell. And so those schools were basically going from like unranked in the R1 research tier institutions all the way up to one of the top. And the reason that I actually and a lot of my colleagues prefer to have people from everywhere is that it brings different perspectives. So maybe you didn't get to go to a top program for your undergraduate degree, for example. Well, what did you do though with that undergraduate degree to distinguish yourself? Did you get good grades? Did you volunteer in a lab? Did you help your community? So I think there's a lot of ways to offset this concept of, oh, I didn't go to the top to begin with. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You can get there.
Yeah, and it's enlightening because sometimes people feel schools use only one parameter in making a decision, but it's a whole lot. It goes way beyond your undergraduate or your master's degree program. I'd like us to move on, and then at the end, we'll take more questions. There are several questions coming in. Hopefully, we'll have time to answer all of them. So the next section is about the interview preparation and process. Um, so I know there are a lot of programs that you would have to interview. There are some that obviously you don't have to interview, but with top programs, very competitive programs, you would eventually have to interview for those slots. What should applicants expect during the interview process?
Oh, great question. The annoying answer, of course, is that it depends.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on who you are interviewing with. So sometimes you would interview with a committee, a graduate committee, and maybe someone on that committee would be your advisor and maybe not. But that committee would be making decisions for the whole program. They bring in maybe a cohort of students. So in that case, they'll probably ask more general questions about what interests you about grad school, kind of your intellectual preparation for it, um, and why that institution. Other times, you'll interview directly with the mentor or the advisor who you'd be working with. And that's a very different interview because, personally, for me, when I interview prospective students, I'm looking to see their fit for my lab group. Do they bring a unique perspective? Do they have the ability to communicate what they want to say?
Mm-hmm.
Are they willing to learn? Can they think on their feet? So it's really going to depend on who's interviewing you, and I would say the best way to prepare for that is to just ask. There's nothing wrong if it's not clear from the invitation email, asking and saying, "Thank you so much for this invitation to interview. Could you tell me who I will be interviewing with
Mm-hmm.
during this time,
Yeah.
just so I can prepare?" You can even ask, "Do you have? Is there something in particular I should prepare for this interview?" And when I get that question, I'll usually reply back, "Oh, you're going to interview with just me, and here," and I'll send a list of questions maybe that I had from their application left, and I'll kind of give the candidate a heads up about what I want to talk about. And there's nothing wrong with asking that.
Yeah.
The worst they say is, "Oh, nothing to prepare." Fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I know like there are a couple of programs that at least give you a certain level of detail. I remember when I was preparing for some of my PhD interviews, I got like a full list of the panel, the website, like a link to their websites, what they do. I was also told areas that they are going to discuss. So at least you have an idea on how to approach the interviews. But as you said, every interview is different. So you need to ask questions. Let them know, like ask them the format, who you're going to interview with and all those things. I think they are very crucial. So as you said, it's very important for you to communicate your research interests, and in your experience, how how best do you think applicants can communicate their research interests and fit with a particular program?
Hi. So the best way to do that is to be knowledgeable about the program and about what's going on in the field right now.
Mm-hmm.
So for candidates who interview with me, for example, they'd go to my website and they'd see that our last couple publications are things about the integrated biorefinery and how policy and science have to work together. So they'd probably read a few of our publications. They might read a couple publications that we've cited. They might go do a quick literature search to see what's been published in the past month or two. Maybe there's one cool article to mention. So really the best way to seem that you're prepared and you're informed is to actually go do the legwork and prep for the interview, and know the people. And if it's a committee, or you're just looking at a department, look at kind of a survey of literature that's been written by the faculty in your area of interest. You don't need to know everyone's area. I mean, a department could have 50 members, but if there are 5 people working in your specific area, read 2 or 3 papers from each person so that you can make a few notes and you can say, "Hey, I know this professor is working on this specific topic and this one's doing this one, and I see connections between them in this way." Um, so you don't have to be overly prepared in the sense of knowing everything someone's done, but especially what they're working on now is really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was perfectly clear. Um, so if you have any experience with, for example, admission committees and what they do, how do you think admission committees evaluate applicants, and what factors like do they really consider very critical in their decision making?
Ooh, it depends on the program so much. You know, we have we have master's programs, for example, and a lot of those are just evaluated by an admissions committee. They don't actually go to an individual investigator or mentor. And in those cases, it is more about the numbers. The master's programs tend to be, how did you do in your undergraduate degree? Um, do you have a reasonable GPA? Did you do well, especially in the classes that matter?
Mm-hmm.
People don't care if you got an A in physical education if your major is going to be sociology, but they do care that you did well in your social courses. So they're looking at that kind of thing, and certainly even for PhDs, we look at that too. They're going to look at letters of recommendation,
Mm-hmm.
really just to make sure that no one's saying that you're not qualified. And then they're going to go to that statement of purpose and make sure that it's coherent, that it has at least an idea of what you want to do in the future and why that specific program's important.
Okay, so I mean, so in summary, every aspect is important from
It's annoying, isn't it?
from your recommendation letters to your SOP, to the interview process, to even the courses you take in undergrad or at a graduate level, all matter. Um, I remember discussing my some of my courses with my academic advisor. I think at that time, so I was in the MPH MBA program, and I foolishly went on and signed up for EPI and bastard concentration, which nobody really does, right? As a dual degree. So initially he told me not to do it, and I said no, I like EPI, so I want to sign up. So eventually it got to a time I was very stressed, so I wanted to switch from letter grade to a pass fail. And what he told me was that if you're thinking of a PhD in EPI, then you don't want to take a pass fail course, because that essentially means that you didn't take the course seriously. So reconsider your decision. So I had to, you know, go on with the stress and do a letter grade. So if you are thinking of a PhD in a particular field, you need to make sure that the courses you're taking actually aligns with those interests that you have. Um, I think we've already highlighted how applicants can communicate their passion for research and potential researchers. All right, so we'll take two more discussion topics and then we move on to the questions in the comment section. We have a lot of questions coming through. So for those who have been admitted into the program already, how do you think they can prepare for the transition into a PhD program and the academic, the academic and the research demands that come with it?
Oh, that is so difficult, because it changes everything and nothing. You're still the same person,
Mm-hmm.
but you walk into this whole new world. The thing I tell my advisees when I get to first meet them, and some I don't meet in person until the day they come to campus, um, is that you're here because we've identified something in you that we think will make you successful here, and that you as a person brings our community just joy to have here. Um, you know, I can't emphasize enough to all of my students that you do belong.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this idea going around that I think PhD students should feel some sense of this imposter syndrome. And I wish we could cancel that out entirely and remind these PhD students and even the master's students and the JDs and the MDs that you belong there, that you've been chosen to be here because of your application and your interview
Yeah.
and the person we think you can be. And we celebrate that in you. So I think the first thing to remember the first day you get on campus is that you're wanted and you're wanted to be there, and that's good. And I don't care if 10 other people have had more experience in the lab than you
Mm-hmm.
or more classes. You belong. And I think if students could just get that into their head to arrive on campus, we'd be in a lot better shape in terms of our student mental health.
Yeah. You know, talk about imposter syndrome. I remember one day we were, discussing among, admitted students, and people were sharing their experiences of feeling like, they are not worth being at Hopkins and all that. And it got to me and they asked me like, do I have any experience of imposter syndrome? And I said, nah, I've been ready for this, and I know I'm worth it. So I don't feel any imposter syndrome being here. Uh, so finally, how do you think applicants can make the most of their PhD experience? So once in your program, what do you think should be some of the important strategies that should be adopted in order for them to make the best use of their time?
Well, I think to really answer that question, you're gonna have to have a sit down with my lab group because I can't even. They are incredible. They get so much out of every day, all of them. Um, I've had students go on these what's called a sponsored internship where they get out of the lab and they go to a national lab or a company for a while and get some tangible career experience because maybe they don't want to be an academic or maybe they just want to try out the real world for a little bit. Um, I try to make sure that they get to go to conferences to both virtually and in person to kind of show their work off and really speak about it and get that experience. But really, I'm so impressed by my group because they will do everything from be in the lab all day to then go socialize with other grad students not in the field, which is really important. You need that social structure and that support network, to going to the gym, to volunteering in the community. I had one student who was a volunteer forest rescue person, another who was an EMS. I mean, they just get so much out of every day that I don't know when they sleep, which is problematic. But I think they're better graduate students for how much they do outside of the lab
Hmm.
and how much community they have together. And I feel like that's the best thing to look for when you're trying to decide these applications is, you know, the rank of the school isn't everything. But the person who's going to be your mentor, you need to make sure you have a good sense about working with them, but also the people in the lab. And I actually have my current students speak with every prospective student that we are interviewing because I want to make sure that they'll work as a team well together. And you
Hmm.
have to want to work with your lab mates and your teammates. So yeah, you should have them on. They're amazing.
Yeah, okay, sure. I think I'll do that. And as you said, PhD is more like you know you're going to become part of a community or part of a family if you're a cohort, and you're going to spend over 4 years together. So programs want to make sure that you are a good fit for everybody. And one particular interview that I attended, as part of the selection process, you'll be asked to go on, for example, a night out or a dinner with the current cohorts just to see whether you are a good fit for the program. So I think that is also very critical. Um, I would like us to check some of the comments and the questions that are coming in. We're still over 180 combined people watching us on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. Um, so I see a lot of thank you, Professor Jillian here. Let's see. Um, all right. Okay, so somebody says, I always get demoralized when I don't get responses from professors that I've emailed. And I think you're right, but just to understand that it's not an indication that they don't want you in their program. There could be a lot of reasons why that is the case. Let's okay. So somebody says that Augustine Offer says that, please, do I have to explain all my research experience during an admission interview?
Oh, it might take too long to explain everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, this holds for whether you're doing a PhD interview, a postdoc interview, a faculty interview, a job interview. You need to decide in your mind what experience you've had that is most relevant to the thing you want, the position you want,
Yeah.
um, and kind of understand how to shape that experience in the context of the next one. I could have spent my PhD interview talking about how I was a swim coach and a lifeguard, but I don't think that was going to help really convince the grad admissions committee that I was ready to do my PhD work, even though I was passionate about that at the time. So instead I talked about the lab experience I have and the problems I overcame in one specific example.
Mm-hmm.
So if it were me prepping for a PhD interview and I've had maybe 4 different experiences, I think I'd take notes on each program and then how a specific experience aligned with that program's goals or the advisor's goals, and really understand how to guide the conversation to talk about the 1 or 2 that are most relevant.
Yeah.
You're going to get a half hour. You don't get to talk about anything in a half hour. It's too short. So pick the top one.
Yes. Yeah.
Matter.
So you have to be as specific, like as focused as possible, because you're not going to spend the whole time discussing only your research interests. There are a lot of other areas that the faculty would want to know. So somebody wants to know some of the common mistakes that they should look out for when writing their SOP. This is from Hadiza Ladu.
So I think I even posted about this not too long ago on LinkedIn. I think where we end up getting into too much trouble are 2 places. The first one is we start saying everything about our life up until this point that makes us want to go to grad school. Okay, that's good. I've read ones that are literally like, when I was in diapers, I learned about this.
Oh God.
That is cool. I don't remember anything from when I was a year old, but that's not really that relevant to what you're looking at today. So people tend to go off on these tangents and just go and go and go. No. If there's a specific life event or a circumstance of how you live or how you were born that is relevant to why it's guiding what's going on today, certainly you can talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But focus really quickly on the thing that's relevant to the application. That should be a sentence, not a half a page type thing. And then the second, kind of big mistake people make is using the thesaurus way too much. And I don't just mean changing words that you think sound better, but I mean writing in a way that's too complicated. Technical communication is all about being clear and concise and to the point. Practice that in your statement of purpose. Get to the point of what you want to say.
Yeah, I think that is very, very insightful. Making your statements very concise and straight to the point. And as you said, especially for a PhD statement of purpose, you don't want to fill the whole thing with your you know your childhood experiences and how you've always dreamt of. Yeah, I remember that is exactly what my advisor told me when he read my SOP. He said, "But that is not different from your master's SOP. PhD is different. You have to really convince us that after you've been given an opportunity to do your master's, you need to do a PhD. So this is not the time to narrate your childhood stories and all that. Just keep that to a very, 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 very minimum." So we have another question from Dr. Emanuela Onaku. How best do we approach the following interview question? Tell me about yourself, your weaknesses, and then why do you want to do a PhD?
Wow, those are like 3 questions.
Yeah, 3 questions in one.
I would say the tell me about yourself question, keep that short.
Mm-hmm.
Pick one thing that you didn't mention in your statement of purpose that is relevant to the PhD and the program, that is just something interesting. It's just a way to start a conversation. Um, it's not the end all be all question. It's
Yeah.
actually just a way to get you going. And then the other one, there's so much debate about this. I had a post about this, and people
Yeah,
are on
yeah.
both
I
sides.
read it.
I don't like the question, tell me about a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
I like the question, tell me about a weakness and how it could impact your PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, one of my personal weaknesses is I overthink everything, like to an annoying level. I am working on a paper right now, and I think I've written the same sentence 8 times. Enough already. And how could that impact my PhD? Well, it could really slow me down, and it could cause me to be too indecisive in the lab, to
Yeah.
not be able to make that next decision on what experiment comes next and why. So then I would flip it to the advisor and be a little smart here and say, so as my advisor, I really hope you could challenge me to force me to make decisions and to decide what's important and show me how to make better kind of faster points to
Mm-hmm.
something. So
Mm-hmm.
use that question as an actual like strength and thing that you've thought of.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is very, very vital. And Dr. Emanuela, I hope you've heard the responses. You don't want to spend so much time, talking about spending 3-4 minutes on a tell me about yourself question. It should be brief, and usually you would want to highlight things that are not already in your SOP and your CV and all that. I know there are lots of resources out there on LinkedIn, but try and look at those that are really on point and go with that. Um, there's one question from Sanjay Kumar. It says that if he has a PhD but would like to do another PhD in a different field, what would be your suggestion? And I think we kind of answered this indirectly. Like, do you really want to switch to a different field? And if so, have you had an experience in that new field or an internship or something that really would convince the admission committee that you're worth a slot? I don't know if you have anything to add to this. Um,
I've heard of that before. And I have to say, a lot of people I know would not take someone to do a second PhD.
PhD. Hmm.
Um, because, a PhD, this is a big decision to do. And a lot of people would think, oh, well, you didn't, how did you have the passion and the commitment to do the first one? How is that going to translate to the second one? Why do that? And I'm not, unless there's something totally different, which I could definitely understand, if you were going from a hard science to then, just something completely different, how you might want to do another degree, that does make some sense. But I think a lot of the times in at least our world today, as long as you can make the case that your PhD gave you skills, you don't necessarily need another degree to go do something totally outside of the box and different.
Yeah.
So, I think I actually had someone ask me not too long ago if they've done a PhD in biology, if they could come do one in engineering. I'm like, you don't need another PhD. Like, go get a research position, a postdoc, skip the PhD stuff that we
Yeah.
all had to suffer through, and actually just go do the field. And in fact, now they're working in engineering and they're pretty good at it. So I would say, really ask yourself what you need a second PhD
Mhm.
for.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. Sanjay, I hope we've answered your question. Um, this is from Kayode. Please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. What should a prospective PhD student do after submitting his application?
um, try not to think too much about it. Uh, the thing to remember here is this is a numbers game. It's what we were talking about in the beginning, that a program may have 400 applications
Hmm.
and 30 spots. Um, and they all have their own way of dealing with applications. Some will reach out for interviews, some won't. Some will just make decisions based on the paper.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's more than okay if you've had contact with a faculty member in say like another week, mid-January, because we've just started getting these applications to our offices. So, in another week, just following up with a really short email that just says, just wanted to let you know, I hope you're doing well. I'm still really interested in this program. Please let me know if I can give you any additional information. Fine. But after that, you kind of need to let it go and just let the process happen, because it does take time. I mean, I've made offers as late as April 1 and as early as like February 1.
Yeah.
So this process just takes time. And yeah, I know it's so frustrating.
Yeah, so as you've heard, just relax. There's nothing you can do about it. Just relax and wait for the time. You surely get a response from the programs. So I know it's it's a tense stage for people. It's a very stressful stage, but you have to let things calm you down. One question from Dr. Nsusa. What's the best way to approach someone for recommendation letter?
Ooh, I think it depends on your relationship with the person. And it's really a shame that these relationships between students and faculty vary so much, not only around the world, but even just in institutions and departments. What I ask for and what I think works pretty well is I ask my students if they want a letter to prepare for me an updated CV so that I kind of know what they're working on, kind of a bullet list of, obviously I know how I know the students, but what specifically about my relationship with the student they want me to mention in a letter. So if they took my class and they really got into the environmental justice component and they wrote an extra bit in their final paper about how something would impact a community and they were really proud of that, I want them to tell me, I want you to mention that in the letter. And then I actually require, because there's these things take a lot of time. A letter of recommendation can take me a half a day to write. I require at least 3 weeks notice before the deadline and a final like polished draft of the student's statement of purpose, because I want that to be done 3 weeks ahead of time so I can read it, so I can make sure I actually think about this student, how my letter could help support their case, and I have plenty of time to do that before the deadline. So I would say whatever you do and whatever approach you use, do it well in advance of a deadline.
Yeah. So, Dr. Nsusa, as you've heard, I mean, you have to first of all get to people that you feel very confident in that they are going to give you a very strong recommendation, and ask them way in advance. You don't want to wait a week to deadline and then shoot an email that you want the recommendation now. So you have to approach them very early in your application process. I think there's a common question that runs through. Someone wants to know what is the weight or how important is having a publication as a PhD applicant. How will that affect his chances? If, for example, he doesn't have he has like a ton of work experience but no publication.
A publication that is relevant to the program you're applying to and in a well-respected journal is always going to be viewed positively, like, because that's what a PhD usually does, right?
Yeah.
Like, we write papers. It will always be viewed positively because it shows that you can do this. I will say that I'm seeing a trend here that scares me a little bit, and it seems like there's too much weight being put on this idea of I need a publication, and people are spending a lot of time trying to write these review articles, and then they end up getting published in places that really wouldn't be places that you'd publish in as a PhD student.
Yeah.
I think those could actually hurt your application, because if you don't know that that type of publication isn't necessarily what the faculty mentor would expect, and you've just done it to push it out there, I think it can actually hurt. So I'd be really careful with my time. And if it were me, I'd rather have work experience, relevant work experience, and put my time in that than spend a year trying to cover a review of a field that I haven't really spent a lot of time in yet to get barely anything worth, from it. It's just, to me, it's not worth the time or the effort.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so, as you've heard, it's not like a deal breaker, but if you have a paper that is, relevant to the field you're applying to, and it's published in a reputable journal, then for sure it's gonna help you. Let's take a
But I
couple of.
think on the flip side,
Mhm.
that's important. On the flip side, though, not having a paper will not hurt you.
Okay, sure.
Like, I think we need to remember that. It's
Yeah.
okay. We don't expect it. You're not a PhD student yet. So it's okay. It really is.
Yeah. So, I mean, so not having a paper is not like a negative mark on your application, but if you have it, it could help, right, in a relevant field in a well-respected journal. So let's take some few comments. I think we are almost time. We've done 58 minutes. This one says, thank you so much, Dr. Banda and Professor Jillian. Someone says, I truly appreciate, I always truly appreciate her authenticity, her relentless support for students, her content on LinkedIn, and she's yet young. Okay, so this is from Mulakin on YouTube. Okay, so someone wants to. I think we've answered most of the questions that are coming in. Let's see. Okay, we've answered most of this. Recommendation letters. In an interview, what are they looking out for? Do you have to wait for a response from a professor before you put in your application? I think we've answered all that. You don't have to. You don't have to wait. So I think we've taken enough of our professor's time. It's almost 12 o'clock on the dot. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Before you leave us, any final thoughts that you have for prospective applicants and students?
Oh, I think just keep asking these great questions. There's no reason why you should know the answers to all of these to start, and find people who will help you and will help mentor you through this. I think, what you're doing is amazing, because, the only way we're all going to globally get better at this is if we share our information. So don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, and ask them of people who have the answers. And
Sure. Thank you so much. So, thank you again, Professor Jillian, for joining us today. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope that this collaboration is going to continue for most people to also benefit. So, thank you for your time. All right, so everybody, this is the end of our program, the Scholars Table. If you're new to the family, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe on our YouTube channels. You can give us a follow on LinkedIn, and if you haven't followed Professor Jillian yet, kindly do so. You're not going to regret it. She shares very insightful, contents about graduate school and everything that comes with it. So thank you, everybody, for your time, and we'll see you shortly with another one. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cornelius Nomechi. I'm a medical doctor from Ghana. I completed my MPA degree at the Harvard THM School of Public Health, this past summer. Last year, during my application process, I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Khalifa, who is a friend and a senior colleague. Dr. Banda's knowledge and experience of the graduate application process made it easier to write an outstanding personal statement, also aim for the right test course and finding the right people to write recommendation letters for me. He also gave me a really good insight about the funding landscape available for me for my education. I was able to get admission into most of the top schools that I applied for, including Johns Hopkins, Columbia University, Boston University, and then Harvard University. Yeah, so if you are actually looking to advance your studies and you're looking for a good and friendly coach, I'll recommend no other person than Dr. Banda.
Hi, my name is Dr. Banda Khalifa. I'm a physician and a current PhD student at the world's #1 School of Public Health, the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I also earned a dual Master of Public Health and Master of Business Administration on a fully funded SOMA Scholar Scholarship here at the Bloomberg School after gaining admission to Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and the rest of the top schools. So, tell a friend to also tell a friend. Come along with me by subscribing to this channel as I share all the techniques and strategies for putting together a strong application package and hear from experiences from some of the most successful international scholars. I'll also invite program directors, admission committee members to share insights into what it takes to get into their program.
Hi, my name is Khalifa, and I'm a medical doctor from Ghana and an incoming dual MPH MBA student of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Graduate school application can be very stressful without any help. During my application process, I was very fortunate to have Dr. Banda Khalifa as a friend and a mentor to help me through it, from the selection of my schools to my recommenders, and even throughout the SOPAS process. He helped to review my resume and my statement of purpose. This helped me to present a very strong application and gain admission into most of the schools that I selected, including Columbia University, Brown University, and Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I would like to recommend his YouTube channel to you. Kindly tune into his channel. If you're yet to start the process, or you have started the process and you're finding some difficulties, his advice and his tips will help you to be able to present a strong application and hopefully gain admission to the school of your choice.